Chad's here to share with us. So please welcome Chad Dick.
For every company I've ever worked for, it's the people who have the most tenure, have been around the longest, have the biggest titles, and tend to be the most respected in their organization. The interesting thing in challengers is they tend to value and respect the least experienced people, the people who've been around not as long. In fact, new hires are the most valuable people because they're the ones with all the fresh ideas. So let's see if we can all get back in touch with that feeling we all had in the first 90 days of our job when we didn't know any better. That's what we mean by being intelligently naive. You were hired because you were intelligent, but you're naive because you didn't know any better. So I have a great story that illustrates this. This fellow here on the right is Ingvar Kamprad, actually one of the wealthiest men in the world, started IKEA. He has admitted that probably the greatest factor in his success has been his sense of intelligent naivete and his willingness not to let experience cloud his judgment. It's a fantastic story from a few years ago. He was in Asia, traveling around in China, happened to kind of turn a corner in a marketplace and stumbled across a scene that looked something like this. Rows and rows of plucked dead chickens for sale. And actually some of the merchants were cooking them up so you could kind of get the waft of chicken broth or whatever it was. Fantastic environment. Guys like this crying and yelling out the prices and the features on their chickens. Now he, of course, didn't have any experience in the chicken market, but like most of us have certainly eaten chicken before. So when he was faced with this situation, what question do you suppose he asked himself? What opportunity do you think he saw? Now, usually when I ask that to people, they'll say, well, gee, are those fresh chickens? Are they from today? Are they chickens? How do I know they're not geese? How do I cook them? What is being cooked? Is that the white meat, the dark meat, right? All the kind of obvious questions you might ask as experienced chicken eaters. Well, actually, Ingvar asked a very different question. The question he asked was, what do they do with all the feathers? A really naive but interesting question. And he didn't just ask that question rhetorically, he actually sought the answer of it. And he went upstream and he found that the farmers, and you can imagine in China where there are billions of people, they actually eat billions and billions of chickens. So we're not talking about an inconsequential amount of chicken feathers. They collect them all, they bury them, and they burn them. Which, if you're in the business of home goods, is a travesty. Because he realized that actually, instead of using goose down, which is typically a very expensive raw material ingredient, he could use chicken feathers sourced in Asia. And he actually got the people to pay him to take them off his hands rather than have to bury them and burn them. And so he built in a tremendous competitive cost advantage simply by following that intelligently naive question upstream. Now, another way you can do this is not necessarily coming up with new-to-the-world questions, is take a look at the question that faces your business and find a way to ask it in a completely new and different way. Fantastic story from a client of ours at Audi. They compete in the 24-hour series of racing, Le Mans, Sebring, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, in the 90s, through the 90s or so, it didn't have a whole lot of success, constantly getting their butts kicked by the likes of Porsche and Ferrari. In fact, were like a distant third or fourth in the trophy ranking. And maybe it was because, even though they had a lot of experience, they were asking the same question that every other race car company was, which is, how do I make this car faster, lighter, more aerodynamic? That's how we're going to win races. And it wasn't until a fairly junior person on the team actually said, well, wait a minute. Isn't this about 24 hours of racing? So it's not so much about how fast we can go, it's how far we go. And so wouldn't the question we should be trying to answer, shouldn't it be, how do we keep it out of the pit and on the track so that we can go farther than the other guys? And they pursued the answer to that question, and it turns out they had some tremendous technology in diesel engines that are very durable, very fuel efficient. They happen not to be the lightest engines, and they happen not to be the most powerful. And they also happen to be kind of big and bulky, so they aren't very aerodynamic. But that TDI, if you can see it on the back fin there, is what they chose to overcommit to in the world of racing. And the results? In the last 10 years, Audi has won more 24-hour series races, oftentimes taking first, second, and third place on the podium. I'm sad to report, in the last 24-hour Le Mans, they only took first and second place. They have now passed Porsche in overall trophy rankings and are closing in fast on the venerable Ferrari. I would imagine in the next couple of years they're going to pass them. So my question to you, if you want to be intelligently naive, is what upstream assumption about your business or category, like the feathers, can you question and interrogate to find and see a new opportunity that nobody else has seen? Or better yet, just take that central question facing your business and start asking different ways that you can ask that question and see what kinds of opportunities it opens up. I love this quote from Steve Jobs because it in and of itself is stolen, as you'll see here in a moment. Good artists copy, great artists steal, and we've always been shameless about stealing good ideas. Actually, Picasso's the one who said that originally, but Steve Jobs wasn't afraid to steal it and live by that as a mantra. So when they revolutionized the computer industry, they didn't go look within the computer industry for their ideas. They went to places like the hard candy industry to understand how they get those bright colors and make the product want to be lickable. That was the brief. How can I make this new computer so colorful that people will want to lick it? My favorite example, and they still have it today, not quite as prominently, you know that little logo on the back that would pulsate when you left your computer for too long, telling you that it was sleeping? They actually have a patent on the frequency with which that light pulsates. It is based on the rate at which the human heartbeat beats when it's in love. So they went to the world of medicine to get a little inspiration to communicate to you that your computer is in love with you. And we see this all over the place. So IKEA, as I said, Ingvar Kamprad made a career out of this. The insight and inspiration for his store layouts came from when he was on his honeymoon in New York and he went to the Guggenheim Museum and took the elevator all the way up the top and realized you had to see every piece of artwork and finish in the gift shop. He said, wow, what a brilliant idea. And that is where the layout design for IKEA stores came from. Or Reed Hastings, a disruptive breakthrough business model. Forget the troubles of the past couple of weeks. Can't argue with the fact that he drove Blockbuster Video out of business. And it came from walking home one day, lamenting the fact that he had a $40 late fee, and he thought that might be the end of his marriage. And he happened to just walk by a gym and said, you know, maybe there's a better idea in that, where you just pay once and you use it as much or as little as you want, but no annoying late fees. How many people here are users of Netflix? Breakthrough idea that just simply comes from taking an idea from one industry and applying it to the other. I love this example. This idea is, there isn't an idea that isn't less novel than freshness and handmade. God had been around since the dawn of cavemen, right? Everything that cavemen and the hunter-gatherers did were always fresh and handmade. But interestingly, nobody had ever done it in the world of cosmetics until Lush came along. And they saw what was going on in the Whole Foods of the world, in the fresh market, local farmers market movement. And they said, you know, what would it look like if we did that in the world of cosmetics? And you end up with an experience that's completely different than anything you'll ever get in a health and beauty aisle in a grocery store or at a department store. So my suggestion to you here is that all the answers you need for whatever problems you're facing are already out there. They just aren't in your category yet. Your job is to go out and find them and apply them to your business. And my suggestion for you is, at every department meeting on a regular basis, the best way to practice this is to ask your whole team to go out, look for ideas outside your industry and category, bring them back in and have a conversation about how you're going to apply them to your category. Method does this every quarter on a disciplined basis, and they don't leave the room until they have 5 ideas they're actually going to implement. One of the best ways to practice stealing with pride.